Hey there, geographers. This is Angela with a review for Lab 3 that has to do with the relationship between the Earth and the Sun. So, in this module, what we're learning about is one of the most important things on planet Earth, that first and foremost, we wouldn't survive without the Sun. Second of all, where we live absolutely is dependent and influenced upon the location. So, for example, if we live in Southern California, the fact that we live at a certain latitude and receive a particular amount of the earth of the sun's solar radiation is absolutely different and has a huge impact on our life, on what we can grow, what we can't grow, what we can do, and what we can't do. And this relationship is paramount, and it's really important that we learn about this. So, first of all, you have a lecture that you're learning about in your other Canvas shell that has to do with this lab. So, you need to learn about that first before progressing into this lab. The other thing, too, is that we have a few different resources that we're utilizing in order to go through this lab. So we have these resource cards. You will also find them in this doc format, and you'll also find them in the PowerPoint as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cities. You're going to find two things for each of these cities, and it's outlined right here. For each of these cities, you're going to find a monthly flow of energy, shortwave radiation, which is the sun's energy, to these 8 cities. You're also going to find a card, and you will find these cards here. You will find them here, and you'll find them here. I put them in lots of places to make it as easy for you as possible. The other thing that you're going to find is another card that is going to include the skin surface, which is basically the temperature over the year for these 8 cities as well. So 8 plus 8 means there are going to be 16 cards, one for each city, one that each goes over one of these two things. A common misconception is that the seasons are caused by the distance between the Earth and the Sun. This is absolutely false. The reason for the seasons is caused by the Earth's axis and the fact that we don't sit straight, we sit at an angle of 23.5 degrees. It's important to watch this video because you will get a visual about daytime land surface temperatures based off of where you live on the Earth. And here I've said the color yellow is going to show the warmest areas, and the light blue is going to show the warmest. So in this lab, we are going to be analyzing these line graphs, which is those cards, right? They're basically line graphs. There are 2 line graphs for each of those cities. And we're looking for incoming solar radiation, which is the first card associated with each of the cities, and we are analyzing the line graph for the temperature on the Earth's skin at those locations. So, why do we learn this? Because the sun equals energy. So, when I teach my students, I say that we eat the sun. Well, technically, we don't eat the sun, but we eat things that eat the sun. So, for example, think about what you're going to eat today if you have a salad. Salad, lettuce, anything vegetables, they eat the sun. They need the sun. Well, cows technically don't eat the sun, but for cows to survive, for chickens to survive, for any of those animals or fish or anything that we eat that's also living or a mammal as ourselves, they eat plants that eat the sun. So, it's important to understand that these graphs show where and how much sunlight fell on the Earth's surface during this period, and it's over a year. These values represent watts. We call those units of energy, and they're measured in joules per second. Scientists call this measure solar insolation. It's the amount of sun that lands on a particular part of the earth in a particular area. So, for example, if you live at lower latitudes, for example, the closer you live to the equator, it means that those areas receive more concentrated amounts of sun. The farther you get away from the Earth's equator, either into the southern hemisphere or into the northern hemisphere, that solar insolation is spread out. and it's not as concentrated. So, knowing the rate of sunlight that reaches the surface helps scientists understand weather and climate patterns. Exposure to sunlight is also a key limit to plant growth, particularly in tropical rainforests. There is a reason why, when we talk about certain areas of the earth, that we have higher amounts of species. That has to do with energy. The sun, bottom line, gives us energy. That energy powers the globe. It powers our food, and it also powers our weather. So, weather across the entire globe begins at the equator. Why is that? That is because the area of the earth receives the highest amount of solar radiation along the equator. The part of the earth that receives the highest amount of the sun's energy is in and around the equator. That is why all of our weather on planet earth starts there. And it starts with the sun. So, what you are going to be doing is you are going to taking these cards. Remember, you've got 8 cities, each of them with 2 cards, and you're going to be analyzing all of the monthly flow and their the amount of sun or solar insolation that they receive, and you are going to be matching them up into 4 pairs. Remember, there are 8. There are 4 pairs of cards. What does that mean? That one city is going to match up with another city. How are we going to analyze this? Well, in science, we need a rubric. The rubric you're going to be using is here. It's called the CER. It stands for Claim, Evidence, and Reasoning. Now, if you are looking for this information in a larger capacity, you will find it here in this doc format. It is in a doc format so that you can actually download it yourself, type in it, and use it. So, the first thing in a CER means we make a claim. One sentence that addresses the relationship between the incoming solar radiation and the surface temperature. Remember, you are being given that information for each city. One card that explains the incoming solar radiation and one card that explains the surface temperature. Then, so you're making a claim or a guess or a hypothesis, however you want to call it. Next, you are going to be putting down the evidence. You have been given the data. So what is your evidence that you have to support this claim that you're making? Well, you've been given these 2 items. So you need to write down the evidence that you have in your hands, those cards with the line graphs, including information for the monthly flow of energy and the monthly skin surface or the temperature. So you're going to write down the evidence to support your claim. Then you are going to write in your reasoning. Why is this evidence important? If you need a little bit more support on what all of these 3 items encompass, this is what your claim, here's your rubric about your claim, your evidence, and your reasoning. So this is how you're being graded on this. Again, these are the line graphs that are being given. You have 2 for each city. The first one measures the amount of the energy that is received by each of these places. And also, let's go back down to Miami, Florida. You're also being given for Miami, Florida, and for all the other cities, the monthly surface temperature in Celsius of this location. You're also being given the latitude and the longitude. There are reasons why places with similar latitude and longitude receive similar amounts of radiation because they're at the same latitude. The Earth receives different amounts of solar radiation based off of latitude, which is why our first lab was so important in learning latitude. So, what you are going to do is you are going to link up which cities you think go together. You can base it off of you think their latitude and longitude. You can base the fact that they go together well with the city based off the amount of solar radiation that they receive. It's totally completely up to you. Now, when we go back to this lab, you are also going to be scrolling down and analyzing. So you're going to review the claim statement and your data sheet. Review and write the evidence. So we've already gone over that. Connect science concepts to our evidence and your exclamation or your reasoning. Okay? Repeat this process for the skin temperature cards, and the second graph compares the monthly average surface skin temperature. So remember, we've been given a card for the amount of solar radiation that a place receives and a card for each of the cities based off of the skin or the temperature that a place receives. Then you are going to analyze the paired surface temperatures and answer the following questions. Once you have paired up each of these locations with another location, so we have 8 locations, you are going to have 4 pairs, 2 in each group. Then you are going to answer after you have filled out a form for each of your pairs, you are also going to answer the questions, how do the temperatures compare between locations in your paired group? What is the detectable pattern in this graph, and what explanation can you give for this pattern? Select one pair of cards to examine and begin observing. What other variables besides solar radiation can you identify as having a possible effect on surface temperature? I've already answered one of those for you in this video. So after you do this, you are going to examine all of your pairs of cards based off of why did you put maybe Tokyo with Miami, or why did you pair those two cities together? Like I said, you are going to go through and fill out a claim, evidence, and reasoning for each of your pairs based off of this rubric, and you're going to answer the following questions. So that means you're going to be doing this 4 times. Please reach out to me and let me know if I can explain this any further. I hope you're doing really well.